She took back what her dead father gave her, but now her mom is furious and the kids are crying. She waited until the whole house went quiet. Until every light was off and every door was shut. Then she opened her suitcase and started taking back what was always hers. And the second I tell you what she was reclaiming, and who had been using it without a single thought, your jaw is going to drop. Because this was not just stuff. This was the last physical connection to a father she never got enough time with, to a country she had to leave, to a childhood that was never really allowed to be hers in the first place. So let us go all the way back, because you need the full picture to understand just how layered and painful this situation actually is. Our narrator, who we will just call her, grew up in one of those households that sounds complicated but is actually just a slow burn of emotional neglect dressed up as family life. Her parents divorced when she was 7. They had been a toxic couple by her own admission. Infidelity on both sides, multiple marriages and divorces, a family portrait that kept getting redrawn every few years. By the time she was 8, her mother had remarried, and everything that followed was shaped by that single decision her mother made for herself. The new household was not a blended family in any warm sense of the phrase. It was more like two separate camps sharing square footage and pretending it was functional. The stepbrothers were older, volatile, and made their resentment known in the particular way that older kids do when they feel their territory is being threatened. They did not need to shout or throw things to make a smaller child feel unwelcome. The looks were enough. The inside jokes she was never let into were enough. The way they occupied every shared space like it belonged only to them was enough. The stepfather was perpetually in a bad mood, the kind of low-level irritability that hums through a house and puts everyone on edge without anyone being able to point to a single moment and call it abuse. And her mother, desperate to hold this marriage together after what sounds like a pattern of failed relationships, essentially decided that keeping the peace with the stepkids was more important than advocating for her own daughter. She chose the marriage. She chose the harmony of the new family unit. And her daughter, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, absorbed that choice every single day without anyone sitting her down and explaining it to her. So the house ran on a system of inequality that was spelled out with absolute clarity. The stepchildren had been through a divorce and needed their things to be protected. That was the stated reason. And those things included toys, a desktop computer, the stereo in the living room, and even the Christmas tree. They had their own ice cream and hot dog tradition with their dad, and she was never invited. She describes herself as a bedroom kid, not a living room kid. She kept her head down. She stayed out of the way. She played alone. That detail is important. She was not just lonely in the way a lot of kids are lonely, the way every child feels it sometimes, the ordinary ache of a quiet Saturday afternoon with nothing to do. This was different. She was structurally excluded from the life happening around her, and she was young enough that this became her entire reference point for what she was worth in that household. When you grow up watching everyone else gather in the living room while you retreat to your bedroom, you do not just feel left out. You internalize something much heavier than that. You start to believe that your presence is a disruption, that your needs are an inconvenience, that the right thing to do is to shrink. Her mother did not fight for her. Nobody fought for her there. Her father did, though. And this is the part that makes everything that comes later hit so much harder. Her dad moved back to Japan after the remarriage. He fought for custody and lost, and she is not entirely sure why. But what he could do, he did. He called every single night. She spent every school break with him. Every summer, she flew to Japan to live with him, and she would have felt that shift the moment the plane landed, the way the air felt different, the way someone was genuinely waiting for her at the arrival's gate with his whole face lit up, the way she was not a background character in someone else's story but the entire point of the whole trip. And because their time together was limited and precious, he spoiled her with intention. He brought her Sylvanian families. Hello Kitty figures. Niche, beautiful, joyful things that you could not just walk into an American store and find. toys that made her squeal and jump and feel genuinely happy in a way that her day-to-day home life simply did not offer her. You have to picture what it would have felt like to unwrap those things. To hold something in your hands that your father had specifically chosen, specifically carried across an ocean, specifically handed to you. Each one was a small declaration. I thought of you. I saw this and I thought of you. And she is very clear about why those toys mattered so much. It was not just that they were fun. It was that they were from her papa. Every single one of them was a physical piece of that relationship, a tangible reminder that she was someone's whole world, even if she was being made to feel invisible everywhere else. When she was a teenager and old enough for the courts to take her preference seriously, she chose to live with her father. That choice makes complete sense. Of course she chose him. He was the parent who showed up, who called every night, who crossed oceans to make her feel seen. Her mother did not take it well. And rather than doing the hard thing, rather than having a real conversation with her daughter about what went wrong, about what their relationship could still become even across that distance, her mother responded by withholding. She kept her belongings. Did not return them, did not pack a box and send it after her, did not set them aside for a future visit. She just kept them, as if they were hers to keep, as if a child choosing the parent who loved her better was an act deserving of punishment. Our narrator assumed for years that everything had been thrown away. All of it. Gone. Now let that sink in for a second. Her mother, who had spent years allowing this child to be excluded and made to feel like a guest in her own home, responded to her leaving by taking away the one thing she had. The toys from her dad. The thing she used to survive the loneliness. The objects she would hold in her hands on the quiet evenings when the rest of the house felt like it belonged to everyone but her. Gone. Or so she thought. She built a life. She moved to Japan to be with her father full-time, and you can imagine how right that must have felt, to finally live inside the version of herself that had only ever existed during school breaks and summers, to wake up in a house where she was not an afterthought, where the refrigerator had food she liked and someone asked her how her day was and actually waited to hear the answer. She got to be a full person there, not a bedroom kid, not a guest, not an inconvenience. And then in 2020, her father died of lymphoma. The man who called every night. The man who brought those toys across the ocean. The man who showed up to every custody hearing even when the courts would not give him what he asked for. The one person in her life who made her feel like she was worth fighting for. Gone. She had to sit with that loss in the middle of a global pandemic, which meant no gathering, no ritual, no crowd of people telling stories about him, just the silence of grief with nowhere to put it. Shortly after, her grandmother passed too. She had no family left in Japan. She moved back to the United States, back into the orbit of the only parent she had left, and that parent, her mother, barely checked in during that grief. She got married in 2023 to someone she describes as wonderful, and at the time of this story, she is 12 weeks pregnant. She has a new life. She is trying. And she decided, with real courage I think, to try with her mother too. Because her mother had been reaching out, sending messages, making small gestures, doing the things that look like an attempt even if they do not yet look like an apology. And people do change. She has seen evidence of that. Her mother is genuinely present for her step-grandchildren in a way she never was for her own kids, which stings more than she probably lets herself say out loud, because watching your parent become the version of themselves you always needed, only for someone else's children, is its own particular kind of grief. But she admits it also suggests some growth. It suggests that the capacity was always there. So she visits, hoping that this time will be different, hoping she will get to sit across from her mother and feel, maybe for the first time, like the most important person in the room. Oh no. Oh no no no. The visit is a disaster in the quietest, most suffocating way. Her mother essentially does not talk to her the whole time. Every conversation redirects to the stepbrothers. She ends up spending the visit essentially babysitting. She had come there hoping for something real, maybe a long overdue conversation, maybe just the simple experience of sitting with her mother and feeling like she mattered to her. Instead, she is handed responsibilities and overlooked. At one point, the whole family goes to the zoo without her and her husband because there was not enough room in the car. Let that image settle. The whole family, minus her and the husband she brought, at the zoo, because there was not enough room. Nobody suggested taking 2 cars. Nobody offered to figure it out. At another point, her mother and the stepbrothers and stepfather leave to go to a casino overnight, referring to that group as the adults, and leaving her alone to watch the children. The woman who is 12 weeks pregnant and came to reconnect with her mother is left babysitting while everyone else goes out. She is sitting in that house, tired, grieving in ways she probably cannot even fully name yet, carrying a baby nobody has slowed down enough to ask her about, and the house is quiet except for the sounds of children who are not her responsibility. And then she sees them. Playing with her toys. Her father's toys. The Sylvanian families, the Hello Kitty figures, all of it. Right there in front of her. In the hands of children who have no idea what those objects represent, who are just playing the way children play, innocent and unbothered, completely unaware that the woman watching them from across the room is holding herself completely still because something inside her has just cracked open. In a house that she was always made to feel like a guest in. Her mother had not thrown them away. She had kept them and given them to someone else's grandchildren. Yeah. Take a moment with that. She waited. She kept it together in the way that people who have spent their whole lives managing their own emotions in unsupportive environments know how to keep it together. She did not cry. She did not confront anyone. She filed it away and she breathed. And when everyone was asleep, she and her husband quietly packed as much as they could into their suitcases. They moved through the house carefully, in the dark, reclaiming things one by one, and the fact that she had to do it this way, like she was retrieving something stolen rather than simply collecting what had always been hers, is perhaps the most quietly devastating part of this entire story. They left the next morning the second her mother came home, said their goodbyes, and gave a vague excuse about something coming up. And now she feels guilty. She feels guilty because the kids seemed to enjoy the toys, and she technically did not need them. But here is where I am going to be very direct with you, because this situation deserves a real verdict and not a careful one. Those toys were never her mother's to give. They were purchased for her, specifically for her, by her father. They were brought from another country as gifts made with love and intention. They were then withheld from her without her permission when she chose to live with her father, which, by the way, was a choice she had every right to make, and no one should have been punished for it. For her mother to not only keep those belongings but to hand them off to her step-grandchildren, children connected to the family that made her daughter's childhood miserable, is not just careless. It is a statement. Maybe not a conscious one, but a statement nonetheless. It says that her daughter's things, her daughter's memories, her daughter's connection to her father, were not worth protecting or returning. They were just toys to her mother. They were never just toys. And the guilt she feels about the kids? That guilt is misplaced, even if it speaks well of her character that she feels it at all. Those children did not lose a beloved collection. They had no idea what those things meant. They will move on to the next thing. But she, a grieving daughter who just lost her father, who visits her mother for the first time in years while carrying a baby she has not even been able to share the news of because her mother could not slow down long enough to have a real conversation with her, she deserved to walk out of that house with something that was hers. Something real. Something from him. She is not the bad guy here. Not even close. She did not steal. She recovered what was taken from her years ago. And the fact that she had to do it quietly, in the middle of the night, while everyone slept, says everything you need to know about what kind of environment she was still walking back into every time she tried to give that relationship another chance. Keep those toys. Every single one. And when her baby arrives, let those Sylvanian families and Hello Kitty figures be the first things that baby ever plays with, because that is exactly what her papa would have wanted. He left her grieving alone, then called 5 years later expecting a second chance, and she said no. He called out of nowhere, 5 years later, voice full of regret, saying leaving her was the biggest mistake of his life. And her answer was no. Just no. Some of her friends think she is being too harsh. I think she is being exactly right. Let us go back to the beginning, because this relationship has layers, and every single layer matters when you are trying to understand why her answer was not just justified but healthy. They started dating in high school. And right from the start, there was a dynamic that she tolerated but probably should not have. His friends teased him about her constantly. They said she was too nerdy, that he deserved better, that she did not measure up to his previous girlfriend. Picture being 17 or 18 years old, still figuring out who you are, still deciding whether you are someone worth loving, and having to sit across from a group of people who look at you and find you lacking. And the person who is supposed to be in your corner says absolutely nothing. He did not encourage it. But he also did not stop it. He did not defend her. Not once. He let it sit there, those comments, that comparison, and he stayed quiet. And she stayed anyway, because when you are young and in love and someone is otherwise kind to you, you learn to absorb the smaller cuts and tell yourself they do not mean anything. You convince yourself that silence is neutral. It is not. Silence is a choice, and she was the one who had to live with what that choice communicated about how much he valued her. Then came the car accident. And this is where the relationship gets more complicated, because she gives him credit here and she should. She nearly lost her eyesight. Her mental health suffered. The kind of fear that comes with nearly losing a sense you have taken for granted your entire life is a particular kind of terror, and she was navigating it while also managing the emotional weight of a long recovery. And he stayed. He showed up. He supported her through it. That matters, and she knows it, and she has never pretended otherwise. She is grateful. She says so directly. But gratitude for one thing does not cancel out everything else that follows, and what follows is a slow accumulation of moments that each, on their own, might seem small, but together paint a very clear picture. He went to university while she took a year off to recover. She joined later. Things were okay at first, and then they were not. He started pulling away. Spending more time with a particular female friend who openly flirted with him. She told him she was uncomfortable. She did not do it dramatically or irrationally. She told him the truth about how she felt, which is one of the most vulnerable things you can do inside a relationship. They argued. Things eventually settled, but something had shifted. She had raised a concern and been made to feel like she was the problem for raising it. That pattern, of her expressing a need and being treated like the need itself was the issue, is going to become a theme. And then her father died. She was in another city trying to rush home. She was crying, calling him from the road, terrified and devastated and just desperately needing the person she loved to show up. The world had just collapsed around her and she was trying to hold herself together long enough to get to her family, and all she needed in that moment was to hear that he was coming. He was in the same city as her. She asked if they could see each other before she left. He said he was busy. He did not come. Let that one breathe. He apologized later. She accepted it. She stayed. But she also tells us that incident changed something in her. And I believe her, because that kind of moment does not leave you. When you are at your most shattered and the person who is supposed to be your person looks at their schedule and decides it is too inconvenient, something in you quietly notes it and never fully forgets. You might forgive it. You might move past it in the practical, day-to-day sense. But it becomes a piece of information you carry about who this person actually is when the stakes are real. It settles somewhere deep and quiet and stays there. The relationship limped forward after that. Long distance for work. Calls dropping to once a week. The connection thinning out until it felt more like obligation than love, her words exactly. She was showing up to something that had already stopped showing up for her, and she probably knew it, but leaving someone is its own kind of grief, and sometimes you stay longer than you should because ending things feels like losing twice. One day she reached a breaking point, and in the middle of an argument she said they should break up. Not because she meant it as a final answer, but because she was exhausted and scared, and sometimes people say the most extreme thing they can think of when they feel like nothing else is getting through. She pulled back almost immediately. She apologized. She told him she did not actually want to end things. He told her she was too dependent on him. And he left. Seriously, pause on that. She apologized and walked it back, and his response was to use her emotional honesty as evidence that she was a burden. He decided that leaving her was actually for her own good. He framed walking away as an act of kindness toward her. That is not kindness. That is someone who had already made a decision and chose to dress it up in language that made him the thoughtful one. He got to leave and feel like a good person for doing it, and she got to sit with the wreckage and wonder what she had done wrong. After that, he dated the same girl from college. The one she had been uncomfortable with. For a year or two. If that detail does not tell you something about what was actually going on during those final months of their relationship, I do not know what to say. 5 years passed. She moved forward, got a job, built her own life, even if she has not dated anyone new. And then he called. Biggest mistake of his life. Can we try again? Some of her friends think she should give him another chance because he supported her during the accident and because she has not dated anyone else. And I want to address both of those things directly, because they deserve to be challenged. Supporting someone during a crisis is not a permanent credit that offsets everything else. It is not a token you can hold on to and cash in 5 years later when you want something. He gets credit for that chapter. He also gets accountability for every chapter after it. The two things coexist. Being good to someone once does not mean you get to keep them indefinitely. And the idea that she should reconsider because she has not dated anyone else is one of the strangest arguments I have ever heard. She does not owe anyone a relationship as a consolation prize because her options look limited from the outside. Her emotional life is not a clock that needs to be started. She spent 5 years growing into herself, processing grief, building independence, and arriving at a place where she does not feel pulled back to someone who made her feel small and disposable. That is not stagnation. That is clarity. Here is my verdict, and I mean every word of it. He did not leave because he was trying to do something noble for her. He left because it was convenient, and he reframed it to feel better about himself. He stayed quiet while his friends disrespected her. He was not there when her father died. He used her vulnerability as a reason to exit and called it kindness. And then he dated the other woman, confirming what she had probably suspected for a long time. None of that is the behavior of someone who simply made a mistake. That is a pattern. And patterns do not disappear just because 5 years have passed and someone finally feels the weight of what they let go. She said no. That no is not harsh. That no is the most self-possessed, clear-eyed, earned answer she could have given. Her friends pushed back, and she laid it all out for them, the whole truth this time, the father's death, the phone call, the once-a-week talk being called too dependent. And she made it clear that she is done, not just with him but with anyone who tries to convince her otherwise. That boundary is not bitterness. That is someone who finally knows exactly what she is worth and refuses to negotiate it down for anyone. The real version of her story does not end with him. It ends with her. Drop a comment below and tell me which story hit harder for you today, and if this video got to you at all, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot.